So, welcome, Bob, and thank you for coming here today for allowing me to interview you on something very special and something very exciting, and in my perspective, maybe one of the most, if not the most urgent topic right now in America, out of my perspective. And the more I listen to you, the more I understand how important this whole topic is and how oblivious I might have been in some areas. So I thank you for coming. And I just want to introduce you shortly to everybody watching and listening. Your name is Bob Schulz. You live near Albany, um, New York. Actually,
Upstate, upstate, a little
upstate
further
New York.
upstate. Yep, on
Yes,
the east side of Lake George.
yes.
Thomas Jefferson visited Lake George and called it the Queen of America's Lakes. Thought I would get that in. Okay.
Oh, maybe that's why my Queensberry is near. I
Yes.
don't know. So you're the chairman of We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education. You're the chairman for We the People Congress, and you are the chairman for We the People of New York. And you have done a huge amount of work. You walk your talk, and I would love to ask you to introduce yourselves. But first, before we go there, I would briefly like to introduce the platform that we're speaking on and honor it. It's a new news network, an independent news network called Grassroots Warrior Network. It's America's independent truth network and a news platform creating unity through diversity, an independently run news network for the people by the people. So very, very suitable. So what we set out to do, and by we, I mean 21 different, very diverse, very, um, I would say everybody in their area, I would consider an absolute expert. 21 different anchors talking about everything truth, absolutely uncensored. So we have a large diversity, education, spirituality, politics, environment, psychology, and many, many more topics. So follow our channel, and I'm sure you'll find more than one favorite anchor. And we're interviewing very interesting people. For example, Bob Schulz throughout the whole week. So there's a lot of entertainment, a lot of education, and also a wide range of different topics that you can dive into. And we are also welcoming in new guest speakers. So if you feel called upon, please contact us, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. So let's go to you, Bob, because everything's about you today in this interview, which I'm very, very glad about. I would love to ask you to interview you. I would like to ask you to interview, not interview. I'm nervous. I would like to ask you to introduce yourself. Okay,
Yes.
we're getting there.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me to join you today. About me. Well, I'm 83, born in 1939. After World War II, my father came back from the Pacific, where he was fighting as a Seabee. We settled at a Coast Guard base in Manhattan Beach in Brooklyn on the Atlantic Ocean. And life was good there, but my family moved to a town in Nassau County, Long Island, in 1953, where I started high school at a place called East Meadow. We were in the first graduating class of East Meadow High School. I met Judy, my wife, there when we were 13, and very much enjoyed those years. Was on the honor roll, was captain of the soccer team. And upon graduation, I joined the Air Force signed up for 4 years, was trained as an electronic equipment repairman, and volunteered and served a year on the distant early warning line, which is a line around, well, near the top of the globe. And those sites have 60-foot diameter antennas to pick up planes that might be coming from the other side of the globe, for instance, Russia. And while there, I was accepted to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. There are 5 federal academies folks know very well: West Point, the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, Coast Guard Academy, maybe, but there's also the Merchant Marine Academy. Upon graduation, I went to work for the General Electric Company and took a leave of absence during the Vietnam War. And as a Marine engineer with a license issued by the Coast Guard, I made 2 long trips over to Vietnam, volunteered. And but my time at GE was very productive. I conceived of, while there, and I was attending night school, picked up a master's in business administration and completed just about all the coursework required for a PhD in public administration. But while at GE's R&D, corporate R&D center, I conceived of the concept of regional waste utilities. These would be facilities that take all the refuse that our garbage trucks pick up. Now they burn and bury their content, sometimes without burning. But regional waste utilities would process that waste and recover, add a reuse phase to the life cycle of everything that we make. Right now, it just has a design phase and a use phase, but everything gets thrown away. But so these regional waste utilities would separate, process for separation, and recover their value. At the time, at the GE's R&D center, the governor, Republican governor of, well, let's see, first, the Governor Rockefeller in New York asked if they could come over and receive a presentation on this concept. And they did. They sent a team over, including the commissioner of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And they had some reporters there. So the presentation was picked up on and reported across the country. I remember Sarah Lyle from the New York Times sort of labeled me as one of America's foremost environmentalists. But in any event, the governor, Republican governor of Connecticut, called and asked if I would go over there and prepare the nation's first statewide plan for regional waste utilities. And I worked out a deal with GE where I would go and GE would consult. We prepared that plan and laws for the state. Then the Democratic governor, Hugh Carey of Connecticut, called and he set up a policy office in the state Commerce Department where I prepared a plan for statewide plan and laws to get it off the ground, to put emphasis on reuse and recovery rather than disposal. And then the Environmental Conservation Commissioner for the United States Environmental Protection Agency called, and eventually I prepared a plan for New York City, a citywide plan, and things were going good. I eventually formed the TEAMCO, the Total Energy and Material Recovery Company, that would be a privately owned but publicly regulated utility. And things were good. On the home front, I was raising 4 children and also thoroughbred horses. I settled on the east side of Lake George, quite an expanse of land, and was raising and racing successfully thoroughbred horses. Life was good. But then something happened in 1979 that changed my life entirely. Lake George is a 32-mile long lake, north to south to north. The waters flow north into Lake Champlain. And it's a lake that Thomas Jefferson visited and called the Queen of America's Lakes.
Wow.
But in the 70s, my town of Queensbury and my county, actually my property straddled 2 counties, Warren County and Washington County. But our local leaders were telling the people that, in their words, Lake George was going to turn pea soup green in 6 to 10 years because everybody's on-site septic system was contaminating the lake. And they said they had a plan, which they put on the ballot, and based entirely on what the government was telling the people approved that plan by a wide margin. And the plan was to run sewer lines down both sides of the lake, connect them together, run the main trunk down 15 miles to the Hudson River, where they would build a sewage treatment plant for processing wastewater from homes and businesses. The day came when the person they put in charge, a fellow named Norman Barnes, was going to be speaking at the little firehouse, the North Queensbury Firehouse, which was right around the bend from where we lived. And I said to Judy, let's go. I've got some questions for this fella. And so the place was packed. And when he finished speaking, I raised my hand. If I hadn't raised my hand, I wouldn't be speaking to you today. My life would not have changed. Mm-hmm. He said, I think he knew who I was, former full-time advisor to the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency and so forth. But he said, no questions. If you have any questions, see me later. I immediately nudged Judy, my wife, and said, we're leaving. We got up and left because I wanted to get on the phone and speak to people who had been around the lake longer than we had. We'd only been around the lake for 10 years. And I was asking people, is there any algae on the shores? No. Do people get rashes when they swim in the water? No. Are there any restrictions on eating the fish caught in the lake? No. So I said to myself, what is going on? And I investigated. And I call that time in my life a great awakening. What I learned was government is not above manufacturing a crisis and concocting a solution that is going to benefit a few of them and their friends, but at everybody else's expense, and in the process, violate the law. What I learned, that there was a law passed 2 years earlier in 1977 called the New York State Environmental, the State Environmental Protection Act, or State Environmental Quality Review Act. That's what it was, New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. And it required on big projects like this that the alternatives be looked at, including the no action alternative, and that the impacts be quantified the totality of the impacts be compared, and the solution or the alternative with the least adverse impact on the environment chosen, that with the economy taken into consideration, that you have to go with that. And here I learned my governments, and this was being approved by the state, were not following this law. They had not done this environmental review. And this was a government that I was not familiar with. And I decided that I would take it to court, the government to court, to see that the State Environmental Quality Review Act was followed, that these alternatives be looked at and the impacts be quantified and so forth. So I did that. I have never had done anything like this before, and obtained the services of an attorney, Lewis B. Oliver, and we took the town and county to court, and we prevailed in the highest court in the state. The decision was rendered. Before that project, the court said, could go any further, this review had to be undertaken. Interestingly, the review was undertaken, and the conclusion was this would be devastating, connecting Lake George to the Hudson River in this way, building extensively, sewering everything, collecting everybody's wastewater, which came out of the ground, connecting Lake George to the Hudson River in this way would have devastating effects, primarily because it would spur development. Lake George then, and it still is, was a family-oriented destination, and it's seasonal. But if these sewer lines were installed, it would open up the area to extensive development. What I learned, and this is significant, what I learned in my investigation was there was a bill going through the New York State Legislature that back then, I'm talking now the late 70s, the only gambling casinos in New York State were on Indian reservations. Mm-hmm. But there was a bill going through the legislature that would authorize about a half a dozen additional commercial casinos off of Indian reservations. And my investigation of what was going on in Lake George led me to learn that those who owned all of these facilities, these commercial facilities and real estate mm-hmm. in this greater Lake George watershed had visions of a gambling casino which would attract tourists year-round. And so, in other words, what was going on here, this was the government manufacturing a crisis and concocting a solution that was going to benefit a few of them and their friends, but at everybody else's expense. And they were going to violate the law, as I say. I became very interested, seeing the government in a way I'd never seen it before. I investigated the Constitution, the Constitutional Republic. Mm-hmm. I seemed to settle on Jefferson. We went down to his home in Monticello in Charlottesville in Virginia. And I just decided that it was important to hold government accountable to the will of the people as expressed in our Constitution. You know, what's interesting, this is a copy of our state constitution.
I haven't seen that yet. I just saw the other thing. It was I
Yeah,
think the We the People Foundation pamphlet.
yeah, but so I learned back then that there was a state constitution. Nobody ever told me that. Every state has a state constitution. We got our here in New York, and many other states got theirs long before we got a US Constitution. And most people have no idea they have a state constitution. And it's the state constitution governs the behavior of our state and local officials far more so than does the US Constitution, which hardly ever comes into play in the day-to-day administration of the state. Go ahead.
I have a question. Would you say that it's equally important for especially young people and young adults to learn the state constitution as much as it is to learn our American Constitution?
Absolutely. Very
Wow.
important,
Never, yeah.
because they live in a state, and the government of that state is controlled, or is supposed to be controlled, far more so by the state constitution than the federal constitution, as I say, which hardly ever comes into play in the day-to-day administration of the state. And this example of Lake George and what they wanted to do is just an example of that. And of course, I have a copy of the United States Constitution as well. And more people know that there is a US Constitution, but they don't know what's in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is important. And so I'm learning, about our Constitution, state and federal. And I also learned that, and this may well be the case in other states, I learned that in New York State, in 1947, a law was passed. This is important. Viewers, your viewers could Google this.
Mm-hmm.
It's section 801.2 of the New York State Education Law. This is what it says. I'm quoting. All teachers of this state will teach all children of this state in public and private schools from grade 8 on. I'm still quoting. They will teach them the history, the meaning, the significance, and the effect of every provision in our state constitution as amended, in our federal constitution as amended, and in our Declaration of Independence. As I say, Judy and I graduated high school in 1957. We weren't taught. My kids were all graduated here in New York State, went on to college. They were never taught. This is serious. Public education, I don't know. The government has, there was a time when education of our young was performed mostly by religious institutions. So you had the Methodists, the Episcopalians, the Lutherans, they all had their schools. But then the government has pretty much taken over public education. And in my mind, it's the government has decided that they're not going to teach the children that they have the ultimate power in our society. Instead, the government has the ultimate power. I think so we have generation after generation who are not anchored to the fundamental principles of our constitutional republics. It's pretty serious. And Jefferson said it's in the natural order of things for government to gain ground and liberty to lose ground. It's natural because people get so involved in their lives, and those in government are driven by the love of power and money.
Agreed.
And
Yep.
yeah, and so it's natural, but we have, you know, the ultimate power in our society rests with us, the people. No word finds its way in or out of our Constitution, state and federal, except by the will of the vote of the people. The people are sovereign in America. It's called popular sovereignty. Who's king here? The rule of law is king in America. Unfortunately, however, things go on day to day, and the people are, because they don't know what's in our state and federal constitutions, they don't know that the will of the people is being violated. And we're feeling the effects of that. It's getting worse all the time. What the people need to do is organize individuals in small groups. I can tell you from all my years of work, individuals in small groups have a hard time prevailing. Mm. So the people need to organize. We have a plan. Mm-hmm. Before we get into that, I'd like to mention the last 10 words of the First Amendment.
That was like in my mind right now. You're reading my mind, because when you said that, you said the last 10 words of the First Amendment. And I said, mm-hmm. What about those 10 words? I'm sure they're part of the whole First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of...
But I was surprised when you educated me into, no, there's more to that.
Well, there are 5 rights that mm-hmm. are guaranteed. Natural, mm-hmm. unalienable rights that don't come from the state, they come from God. And in the order that they're mentioned, it's free worship, speech, press, the right to assemble. We can get together and criticize the government if we want to. And then the 5th right, which is the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. And during my investigation, I learned and actually did research and prepared a thorough historical review on that right. Boiling it down, it means this: if we see the government stepping outside the boundaries that we have drawn around their power, we can petition for a redress of that grievance. They are obligated to respond. And if they don't, we have the right of enforcement. And we have been petitioning. It's so frustrating. We have been petitioning for now, for many years, and government.
25, I think, right?
Yeah, and government. How do I say this? So, we were petitioning the courts. You don't
have to be worried about censorship, because this is going to go onto Rumble, which is uncensored, basically. And so you can say, just speak your full truth.
No, I'm not. Yeah, no.
Okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah, just how best to articulate. So when we find, after many years, attempting to hold government accountable to the will of the people as expressed in our state and federal constitutions, we have petitioned through the judiciary. And believe it or not, and we've done this many times, The judiciary dismisses cases saying no substantial constitutional question is directly involved. Excuse me? What's a non-substantial constitutional question? If the government violates the Constitution and you raise these questions, they're all substantial. There's no such thing as an insubstantial constitutional violation, but yet 22 times the judiciary has dismissed our cases on those grounds. And if it's not being dismissed for those reasons, the government will say, or the judiciary will say, well, we have no standing. We have not indicated that our harm due to this violation by the government of some provision of the Constitution, we have not indicated that our harm is greater in kind and degree from the harm suffered by the population at large, the public at large. That's nonsense, because whenever government violates any provision of the Constitution, it harms everybody equally. You can't prove or show that your harm is greater than the public's at large, their harm. It's just nonsense. But it's what that takeaway, well, let me get on. Also, we've petitioned over and over again public officials for violating the Constitution, and they don't answer at all. They just don't answer. So what's the takeaway here? Clearly, the government, all three branches, do not want that right restored. That right, a little bit of the history of that right. There was people should Google Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. It was published in January of 1776, just a few months before our Declaration of Independence. And this pamphlet broke all records on the sale of documents like this, because it defined for the people the problem that they were having. Thomas Paine in Common Sense says, in this pamphlet, he says, I will be talking about the problem facing us in our colonies. He said, we're deeply divided as we are today. He says to the people there then, we're deeply divided. There are those who are for separation and those who are for reconciliation. He says in this pamphlet, I'm going to lay out all the arguments for separation from the government of Great Britain. And he does that. And what struck me, and this is, I came across this as I was doing my investigation following that initial lawsuit during my Great Awakening. What struck me, Thomas Paine talking about the reasons for separation. He said, he used the words, we have been recklessly petitioning. What was he talking about? The French and Indian War ended in 1763, some 11 years, more than that earlier. And the government started to treat the people here in the colonies differently than they were treating their own people back in Great Britain. And people here were then petitioning and petitioning and petitioning and getting nowhere. And so Thomas Paine says, we have been recklessly petitioning. He ends up his pamphlet saying, we here in the colonies, we need a new manifesto. It turned out to be the Declaration of Independence a few months later. But he says we need a new manifesto in which we lay out the futility of our approach. And he says that would do more good, I'm quoting, he says that would do more good than a boatload of petitions going over to England. So we got the Declaration of Independence. People should take a look at it from this perspective. Our Declaration of Independence lists 26 grievances. At the very end of that list, the next paragraph has two sentences, one of which has a semicolon, separating two parts. And he says, or the Declaration of Independence, right at the end of that list of 26 grievances, it says, and we have been humbly petitioning, and our repeated petitions have been answered only with repeated injury. That's what our declaration says. And it goes on and says, a prince whose character is thus marked by every act which would define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. That's our Declaration of Independence. So we declared our independence, went to war over the government's refusal to respond, to provide a meaningful response to our petitions for redress of grievances. So we get America, we get, and I should say that during the Constitutional Convention, there are quite a few delegates who refused to go along without a Bill of Rights. And during those debates, it was proposed that in the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment, it would recognize the people's right to instruct the government. But the majority overruled that and said, no, it won't be necessary to instruct the government as long as they have a responsibility to respond to petitions for redress of grievances. So we got the current language. And things were fine in America. Actually, the right to petition goes back to the Magna Carta of 1215, where the king said that if the people have any evidence that we're not treating them properly, they can petition. And if we don't respond in 40 days, then the people have the right to take everything we own, except my life, the life of the Queen, and the life of the children and the Chief Justice. And then having redressed the grievance, they may then return their allegiance to us. So this right to petition, it's been around for a long time. And it shows up in our Constitution. It shows up in our Bill of Rights. And things were fine in America. There's a professor at Yale, Akhil Amar, who wrote a paper. He focused on Connecticut and Connecticut's history with the right to petition, he makes a point of the fact that even in the colonial days, more came out of the government as a result of petitions than for any other reason. But things were fine in America with our Bill of Rights until around the 1830s and 40s, when the Southern congressmen, the Southerners in Congress, decided they did not want to respond to petitions coming from abolitionists seeking to end the practice of slavery. So in 1836, they got a gag rule passed. It stated that any of those petitions would be permanently tabled. And of course, eventually, we had to go to war. Again, because government was not responding to petitions for redress of grievances. And so here we are again. We have been petitioning in government respectfully, professionally, intelligently, rationally. And government, if we petition those in government, legislative and executive branches directly, they don't respond. If we petition the judicial branch, they come up with, no standing or no substantial constitutional question directly involved. It is pathetic. And so here we are again. The government has gone haywire. It's getting worse all the time. They're not following the Constitution, they're violating it over and over again. And they're refusing to be held accountable to our rule of law. As a latest example, here in New York State, our state constitution requires that the state budget be adopted by April 1st every year. And it's always late. But last year, 2022, a few days before April 1st, our governor, Hochul, introduced a bill during the budget cycle, which was passed by both houses. And she signed it. And the media, the regular dominant media, was reporting what this bill authorized, not mentioning that it was unconstitutional or conflicted with a provision of the Constitution, but just talking about this bill. What did it authorize? It authorized the state of New York to use $600 million and Erie County, which is out by Buffalo, to use $250 million. So for a total of $850 million to be used in aid of the owner of the Buffalo Bills. His name is Terry Pugalis. He and his wife are the sole owners of the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. According to media reports, they have a personal worth of over $6 billion.
Wow.
And this bill, and he wanted to build a new stadium for the Buffalo Bills. And so this bill would authorize the use of $850 million to lower his cost of building a new stadium. So I knew that there's a provision in our state constitution, explicit provision, which prohibits the use of public funds in aid of a private undertaking, which is exactly what this was about. As a matter of fact, my first victory in court against Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo's father, way back in 1990, I had won a case against him for violating that same provision, using public money in aid of a private undertaking. So, of course, I'm familiar with the state constitution. Most people aren't, including those in the media. And so they're reporting on this event as if it's just, another happening, in the state. We brought a lawsuit, and the lower court and the appellate division recently have said, well, this is okay because there's a public purpose involved. Well, excuse me, there's a public purpose involved in everything that the private sector does, that every private corporation does. If there was no public purpose involved, whether it's making chewing gum or something else, then there would be no cause, then those companies would not be in business. So that there's a public purpose involved in everything that the private sector does. So we have filed a motion for re-argument in the appellate division, very strong motion. And we've indicated in the bottom line that if there's no meaningful response to this petition, it gives cause to the people to organize, to hold the government accountable. But in any event, so the First Amendment is what our organizations are all about. We need to fully restore this First Amendment right to petition the government for redress of grievances when we see a violation. They're obligated to respond, and if they don't, we have the right of enforcement. And I am now personally committed to getting the people in every state organized. It's interesting. If you look at Washington, D.C., the legislature has a building. The governor or the president has a building. The judiciary, they have their building. Every state has a building for the executive, a building for the legislature, a building for the judiciary. We need a building in every state for the people. For we the people.
Yeah.
And we need an organization, regional coordinators, county coordinators, constitution monitors, people who attend school board meetings, town and county meetings, get on the mailing list, get the same information that the members receive in advance of every meeting. Determine if there's a conflict, and petition for redress. If the petition does not receive a meaningful response, then those constitution monitors, wherever they are in the state, will submit that to the Citizen Vigilance Center, which would be fully manned, not only with legal talent, but the other skill sets needed to run a statewide organization. And the people in the Citizen Vigilance Center will investigate every alleged violation of our Constitution and will recommend a course of action for the underlying membership. Call it the committees of safety, call it an army, the underlying membership, the few percent, it was only 3% of the population that actually participated in the Revolutionary War. And if we had a few percent, 2-3% of the population over the age of 18 in every state willing to be, maybe they're too busy to get directly involved, but they want government held accountable to the rule of law, which begins with our constitutions on down, and are prepared to act, as part of a critical mass, willing to put a collective foot down against these violations in order to earn the respect that they don't now have.
Mm-hmm.
The government does not respect the people. That has to turn around.
We don't have respect for the government anymore because they've lost our respect because they've gone rogue.
Yeah, but it's our job to hold them accountable.
Yes, exactly.
People don't know this
Mm-hmm.
because they're not. Civic education in America is for naught.
We're in the dark. It's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And they've put us in the dark. And the other thing is we've also let that happen.
Yeah, it's our fault unknowingly, probably.
Yeah.
Fine, I'll admit that, because
Mm-hmm.
they're just not taught.
Well, didn't Jefferson say it's in our? Was it Jefferson who said it's in our nature?
Yes, it's in the natural order of things.
It's the natural order of things
Right.
that we go about our lives, and we hope the government is doing the right thing. Meanwhile,
Yeah, but this was a major oversight. Sure,
Mhm.
people were thrilled when we set our system, when we established our constitutional republic.
Mhm.
Wow, the people have the ultimate power. We set government up to secure our rights.
Mhm.
Praise God. Okay, but there was an oversight. We didn't take Jefferson seriously enough, and so forth. We didn't recognize the need to watch what they're doing, the government, and to compare that with the will of the people as expressed in our constitutions. Hey, our constitutions are amendable. If people want to change, look, our federal constitution has 27 amendments.
Mhm.
In our New York State, we're on our 5th constitution, and this current constitution, adopted in 1938, has been amended hundreds of times. So our constitutions are, if enough people believe we need to change a provision, fine, we can do that. But we don't change the Constitution by ignoring it, which is what's happening. Government is changing the Constitution by ignoring it over and over again. And it's our fault. We've let it happen.
Mhm.
We have the power to turn it around, but it takes organization.
Well, and you have set up really a great amount of different, first of all, websites to read. Read about what your work has been about, what you've been doing. You've been in and out of courts for probably the past 25 years.
At least, Ellison,
At
since,
least, yeah,
right.
probably
Right.
30, and you've won some very important cases.
Early on, but then the government decided to put a foot down. Enough of this. It's as though they've said to themselves, enough of this. For instance, we won that first case
Mhm.
having to do with Lake George. Then there was the 1990 victory against Governor Cuomo. We were winning, and there was another victory against the New York State Commerce Commissioner and so forth, and some local victories.
Mhm.
Here's a cute one. This is funny. So when I decided in the 80s, after learning what our constitutional republic is all about, and learning the natural tendency for government to misbehave and the need to hold them accountable or we lose it all, I had decided that I was going to devote my life to this and that I was not going to ever take any money to do it for the work that had to be done. But to support myself, I would subdivide my land, eventually pieced together 160 acres where Judy and I settled in the 60s. And I would subdivide my land, and when I needed money, I would sell another piece. And so in the 80s, late 80s, I took the northern end of my property and subdivided it into 10 building lots. Mm-hmm. And for great expense, like almost $100,000, I built a road coming off a town road, town of Queensbury Highway, a roadway, coming back to the east towards the mountain and then north and then a cul-de-sac and back out. And that would serve these 10 building lots. So this is funny. So the town of Queensbury decided they were the lead defendant in the Lake George case that I had won. Oh. And they were upset. So they were not going to allow me to tie into the town road with my road, which I had to take them to court to win that case. And I eventually built the road and tied it in, and I named the road Constitution Way. So, so in the late 80s, this road is, we sold all the lots except one. There's a 5.3 acre lot.
There you go, Ray. There you go, Avenue.
Yeah, right. So a lot of my friends say they want to see New York State's Citizen Vigilance Center built on Constitution Way on that
really fantastic.
On that 5.3 acre lot.
And that would be the first building in this action plan that you have in all 50 states, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm prepared to just donate that 5.3 acre lot for this purpose. Anyway, it may come to that. That would be nice before I pass to see something like that. All right, so that's the plan. And it's all to fully restore our rights under the last 10 words of the First Amendment, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. When they step out of line, we can petition them. They're obligated to respond. We have the right of enforcement. By the way, in 1803 in Marbury versus Madison and in Blackstone commentaries, they make it very clear. Any right that's not enforceable is not a right. With every right, there's a remedy.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have the several websites. I prepared these notes because I would love to share this with everybody. So one of the websites, which is about education on our constitutional rights, is www.wethepeoplefoundation.org. That's definitely a website to go visit. So the We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education has been established to fulfill the need for popular education, including education, awareness, and knowledge about the Declaration of Independence and every provision of the federal and state constitutions, about the sovereignty of the people whose will the constitutions are designed to express, and about the government they are meant to control through the constitutions. Its educational program works to inform the public, increase awareness, and encourage appropriate government reform through constitutional processes, including the exercise and enforcement of the First Amendment right to petition. So then we have, that's one website to go visit. The other one, and I'm going to add everything in the description, then www.wethepeoplecongress.org, which is about civic action or civic action oriented organization. Both were established in 1997. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So the We the People Congress has been established for the purpose of developing in the public forum from the ordinary non-aligned citizenry a constituency committed to what Mahatma Gandhi, a favorite of mine, and Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as a militant, non-violent mass movement with the goal of achieving substantial reforms in the structure and the process of government through political activism. which what I'm seeing happening right now is like this couldn't be more timely than right now. Then we have another website, which is givemeliberty.org.
Yeah, that's a portal page,
Yeah,
allows you to link to the others.
exactly. That's where you can find all these links. So
Mhm.
if you get lost, then go back to givemeliberty.org and then you'll find it. And then we have We the People of NY, so New York.org. And what you've prepared is websites for every 50 states representing what you call as your action plan for the establishing of, first of all, a building to hold the government accountable where people can volunteer, step up, learn about, first of all, the state constitutions and then our main constitution, and really step up to, like, we need a solution, and that's, I think that's a very tangible solution that has, it's a missing link in the chain. We have we the people, and then we have the government, and there's a gap in between, and that gap allows for them to do whatever they want. And as you said, you go to court and then they just ignore you. How is that even possible?
Mm.
That shouldn't even be
Yeah,
possible. Yeah.
right. So yes, we have We the People of New York, and we have cloned that website. So we have websites for every other state. They're not out there yet, but soon to come. And we have those domain names for all the websites ending in .us. So it's We the People of FL
Very cool.
.us,
Mm.
We the People of
MD.
GA,
Yeah.
yeah, right, MD .us. And we'll probably change, I don't know yet, we may change We the People of New York .org. We the People of NY.org has been around, the organization has been around since 2011, but we may change that to a .us just to be consistent, don't know yet. But all the others will be .us, and we have those websites. So I'm about to launch, get on the road here in New York State, our first meeting in Poughkeepsie, New York is the 15th of June. And then I'll be very busy reaching and having meetings with people all across the state of New York in the days to follow. And then I will go on to those states down the East Coast, so Virginia and Maryland, and the Carolinas, Georgia, and so forth, Florida. I've already been talking to groups of people in most of the states who are stepping up and volunteering to help get it off the ground in their state. Looking forward to getting back on the road. We've sort of been distracted here for 7 or 8 years, but the state of the country demands that we get on with this. And I'd love to see all of this materialize. We intend to have We the People Congress be the parent organization with each of these state entities as branches of We the People Congress. I've been convinced to do it this way by advisors who say we need to take steps to keep the wrong people from coming into a state organization and taking over and moving the organization in a different direction.
It sounds very good too. I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're anxious. We'll see.
So what do you need? How can anybody who's listening and would like to, is curious, would like to contact you or to volunteer, where should they go first?
Bob at givemeliberty.org is my email address, Bob at givemeliberty.org. Just tell me what state they're in and their contact information. I have a very large, I've lectured across the country a few times, every state, and have a very large email list. And people can just let me know that they're interested in the plan. I call it the plan, all capital letters, the plan. It's basically organizing people and getting a citizen vigilance center built in every state, getting coordinators and constitution monitors, all for the purpose of watching what government is doing. Politics aside, this has absolutely nothing to do with politics. It's all about our Constitution, the will of the people, and holding government accountable. It's long overdue. Unfortunately, it was just an oversight when we set the country up, but never too late. So
Well,
people just let me, just let me know that they're interested in the plan and doing what they can to help get it off the ground in their state. And they will be hearing from me or us.
Yes. Well, I fully support the plan. And one reason why I wanted to share it with everybody here in this network, and who knows where it will spread and who will hear about it. I always believe the right people hear about the right thing. So, I'm supporting the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. presidential campaign, 2024. I'm very curious. There are a lot of candidates, and I think it's probably it's record break. The numbers are record breaking now of the people who are wanting to run for president, and we'll see who make who make it to the next step. But out of your perspective, as unbiased as possible, um, what is your impression on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and do you expect him to actually have a chance? I'm just going to be a little bit facetious, but I would really like to know what you think and how you see his position, and it's specifically toward what he's saying, because I find it to be, the more I listen to him, very much in alignment with what you're doing out of my perspective. But what is your take on his presidential run in general?
Well, I caught his announcement, and I have to say that I liked what I heard. He, very much like Mark Levin these days, is indicating that it's all about the Constitution, and that we are losing our constitutional republic. We're not being governed by the Constitution. We're being governed by a ruling class that's got to change. So I like, basically, that was what I got out of his message. That's my mission in life as well. I'm not political, but you've asked, and clearly, if it gets down to the current president versus Mr. Kennedy, then there's hands down, it's Mr. Kennedy. I mean, this current president I'm not very happy with him and his policies, and we won't go into that, but I would say it's a clear, if that's the choice, then I would know how to encourage people to vote. I would say they would have to cast their vote for Bob Kennedy.
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
He doesn't go by the name Bob, right? It's Robert.
He's Bobby.
Oh, Bobby. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right.
I guess that was established maybe based on the junior.
Because there was a Robert, right? Yeah.
Yeah, his father. And I do think that it would be great to get away from that, because everybody knows it's junior. Basically, his father sadly was assassinated. But
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
if we could just like, I love Mr. Kennedy, and I love this new direction that I've seen being taken in terms of I think he announced in Boston, he announced that I'm a Kennedy Democrat. And so a lot of people are having well, we want him to be for us too, basically. I even see that happening with international contacts who are like, well, um, we kind of feel like he's speaking for us too, uh, from Italians to people in Denmark to people in Australia. And so something new has happened where now it's like, well, why don't we say I'm a Kennedy Republican? Well, he's not running in the Republican Party. And then something happened, and there suddenly appeared this title, I'm a Kennedy American. And we took that for our Facebook group, and I thought, that's genius because it speaks to all of us, and that's also his tagline, which is "Heal the Divide." It's not about Bobby right now in this interview, but I guess I'm really
Well,
getting carried away with everything
yeah.
happening
Well,
right
his
now.
message resonated with me, and
Yeah.
I would imagine it'll resonate with a lot of folks of all parties, as you say, of all backgrounds.
Well, he's definitely saying things that you will not hear from any politician, or I haven't heard so far, and also just addressing very important things. And he also says, I am not your ideal presidential candidate. He's been fighting for the past 45 years for human rights and the environment and water. And he said a few couple things, very funny things actually, in his announcement in Boston, where he said, "I'm not your typical president, like your pretty boy president." And so I thought, well, that's really not what we need. We need somebody who has been walking his talk and not now stepping up like, oh, I have all these promises and I have all this money behind me. So it's refresh. He's like a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, now coming back to our topic, is there anything that I might have forgotten that we could point people to? 'Cause I had everything listed, but I might have forgotten something.
No, I think we covered it.
Me too.
People want more information, they can certainly email,
Hmm.
and we'll get right back to them. Um, Getting on the road,
Hmm.
we do need people to step up in defense of the Constitution,
Yes.
um, and in defense of civic education. That's going to be the primary issue for this new organization here, or this revitalized organization here in New York State. Um, there is this law, as I mentioned, that requires the teaching of the history, meaning, effect, and significance of every provision. It hasn't been taught.
Hmm.
Rising generation after generation are not anchored to these principles, don't even know there's a state constitution, much less what's in it.
Hmm.
That's got to change.
Yes.
And so we need all the help we can get. Um, Look forward to hearing from people.
I also wrote down something with media. I think it would be really important with this center for the people, that there's a communication portal between the media and them. There should be a place where the media actually can confirm information and do some investigative work with we the people. The we the people. What would you say? Are we going to call it the We the People Congress, or is it the We the People Building or People's Building
Well, there's going to
House?
the organization is the We the People of New York, and
Hmm.
it will have a citizens vigilance center, a
Yes.
building,
Yeah.
maybe on Constitution Way, and so forth. But it will be fully manned, not only with legal talent
Hmm.
to investigate these refusals by government to respond to proper petitions for redress,
Hmm.
but it will have all the other talent needed to run a statewide organization. And there will be a We the People TV weekly show that people can tune into. So it will communication up and down the state. Each state is very important. So we'll have state coordinator. We'll have 9, and here in New York, we'll have 9 regional coordinators. Each regional coordinator will be responsible for keeping the county coordinators in their region, 7 or 8 counties in each region, up to speed on everything going on. And the county coordinators will coordinate with all of the Constitution monitors within their county. So communication, and we have to do it in such a way where it can't be shut off. It can't be turned down or silenced. We can't rely entirely on the internet. So all of that we have in mind, and we'll prepare accordingly.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know this is I appreciate your time and energy and effort and everything that you're doing for our country. I hope this will attract a lot of people to step up and support us.
Well, thank you for having me, and good luck in all that you do.
Thank you.
And all that Mr. Kennedy does, Bobby.
Thank you.
Okay. Stay well. Yeah,
Thank you.
take care.
You
Stay
too.
well.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye now. Bye.
Bye.